What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Figuring It Out Finance podcast, where we talk about travel hacking, personal finance, life hacks, and real estate. My name is Chris Rickenbaugh, and I'm your host again, as always. And before we get going today, go ahead and follow me on all the socials. So Instagram, TikTok, YouTube now, where I am Figuring It Out Finance everywhere. Go ahead and check out the website at figuringitoutfinance.com, where you can check out everything. I'm up to date. You can go sign up for my newsletter as well, where you can stay up to date on everything that I'm doing. So today's podcast, I'm going to cover podcasts that I've been listening to lately. So you're going to want to stick around till the end to hear my favorite podcast, but getting going, I'm a huge podcast person because it's just so easy to get a lot of information all at once. So while you're working out, while you're driving, and honestly, I just fall asleep to music. So it's a little bit easier for me to stay locked into some of these podcasts where I can learn some different things and maybe to where I'm not exactly educated in. So I'm always looking to learn and, hearing different stories, hearing different opinions on certain topics. It's interesting to be able to hear. So one of the first podcasts that I'd say I've been listening to a lot more lately has been the Action Academy podcast by Brian Lubin. So the Action Academy podcast, I've actually had a 15-minute coaching call with Brian, and it really kind of set me on this way to use the podcast and the Figuring It Out Finance to document everything that I'm doing in my flips and my life, and kind of building a business through that. Not exactly offering anything yet, but just being able to document everything that I'm doing. So on the Action Academy podcast, he brings in a lot of people that are doing huge deals through his Action Academy community, and just some bigger names that are able to talk about the bigger topics. So they really center around buying businesses and turning business into monthly income that replaces high-paying corporate jobs. So Brian's story is that he had to replace $20,000 a month to be able to, live the way he was living. So he was able to do that through his podcast, and then he started to build a community and was able to raise or make about $100,000 in 2 days. So really interesting hearing his perspective on a lot of these topics, as well as the people coming in buying all different types of businesses as well as real estate. And it's a little bit more on the aggressive side. It's these people that are spending or getting paid $20,000 a month, and they're trying to figure out how to quit their job. So he's coaching them on how to buy these businesses, and they join his group and figure it out together. So really interesting on that sort of way. So highly recommend go checking it out and finding a topic that you're interested in, because not every single episode is going to be for you, like every podcast, because you might just be more interested in travel hacking, you might be more interested in real estate, or maybe you're just trying to figure out your personal finances. So not every episode is for you, but it's interesting to hear the different topics because it gets you thinking bigger, and you never know where that inspiration is going to come from. So I always try to listen to every episode, even though it's maybe not something that I'm super, super interested in. So podcast number 2 here is the Wealthy Way podcast by Ryan Pineda. So I first listened to Ryan on the Better Life podcast by Brandon Turner. And, I never really thought of it much. I thought he had a really cool story, and I never really dug any deeper until I heard him come up on the Action Academy podcast by Brian Lubin. So they all kind of go together here. And he had a really, really interesting viewpoint on getting started in real estate. So he's kind of put into words what I've been thinking, and I've never really been able to tie it all together, because I was working in a really low-paying job, and Ryan was, he was or mine was sales, but he was playing baseball for a lot less than I was, and mine was sales. So, I had the illusion that if I make all these sales, I'll be able to, create a life for myself. But when the margins are so slim, I'd have to sell a shit ton of product to be able to even make a living. And that was just kind of not doable at that organization unless you just get lucky and hit one big one. So sales is sales, but Ryan was playing Major League Baseball at it's like the level under major leagues. So he was still a professional baseball player, but he was playing in the minor leagues, working to get up to the majors and get on a team. So, he was only making $1,200 a month and super low income. And he just said, you know what, I got to go for it at a certain point. So I broke down his 2 books, The Wealthy Way and Flip Your Future, because what he did was he maxed out his credit cards and was able to flip a house and start doing that after he was flipping couches. So he went all in, and he takes the approach that, buying rentals is cool, and that's the main goal overall. But you should really be working on your active income to be able to support yourselves, and then you'll end up buying the rentals, because that's just going to go along with the flipping. So, that was my mindset too. It's like I was with, or I was all in on the Bigger Pockets. I still listen to their episodes pretty much every single day. And they take the safer route for these people working their jobs, and they're like, man, I just hate my job. I want to get into real estate. And they take the safer approach to where, hey, you need to be able to do this a little bit more slowly. And they teach the safer route. And it's really, really good advice because you hear from all angles. And then Ryan says, if you're broke, you got to do something. If you just stay in your low-paying job, you're not going to get anywhere. So, taking that risk and buying that flip and, just going for it, you have nothing to lose. And that's what I felt like after, I got the money out of my current house and I was able to sit on it, quit the job and say, all right, well, what's next? I need to do something because I have about 6 months of reserves here right now. So what can I do with this money in the next 3 to 4 months? Can I make a return on that? So I decided to flip a house. And while I was flipping that house, that's when I came across his podcast. And when he was on Brian Lubin's podcast, and he said, you can flip a house and make 20, I think he used the example of 40,000, but I'm going to say 20,000. So you could flip that house and make 20 grand. And then you could be able to, keep building up, keep using other people's money and keep, compounding on that. Because you flip 5 houses and make 20 grand off each, just a round number, that's 100 grand a year. That's going to beat so many other people in life that are working for even 60 to 80,000 a year. And you're going to be able to only do that with 5 flips per year. It's like, okay, that makes complete sense to me because I was in that position. And he said, if you're broke, you got to go for it. So that made a lot of sense to me. And I said, all right. And I actually promised my girlfriend, I said, hey, I'm going to flip a house before the end of the year. I didn't know it was going to be about 3 months after I told her that. But, I was able to do it. I'm able to see the benefit. Now I'm working on a lot of different options to be able to buy more. And, working with the agent I am now, she's a rock star. So she's able to send me deals. I have wholesalers starting to send me deals and, some private money that's starting to come into the picture and people that have said, yes, I want to do a deal with you. So I'm just looking to get those reps and take base hits. Maybe it's not a big $25,000 to $35,000 flip and a profit at the end of the day. But, if it's, I wouldn't say I'll take anything under 15 to 20,000 after taking Cam Cathcart's, Deal Flow work series of 4 videos. He said, don't take anything unless you're going to make at least 20 grand off of it. And that's kind of the mindset I'm rolling forward with now. Like if I'm not going to make 20 grand, then it's not worth it. So, just doing a couple of those flips a year with the crew, if you're able to get in, get out within a month and a half and then get it sold within 2 to 3 months, you're going to be able to stack and compound and not have to work a typical W-2 job. And then you can just accelerate and grow from there. So getting into the last podcast here, I've already mentioned it a couple times, but it's the Better Life podcast. And I think I've talked about this one before because it's with Brandon Turner and Cam Cathcart, to where, they're big real estate guys. Brandon, he's got, I think over $1 billion worth of real estate, and, slowly started and then blew up with the Bigger Pockets program. And now he's doing his own thing. And then Cam Cathcart, I listened to his episode, and now he's a co-host on that podcast as well. And he's got really cool stories and insights from, what he does, because he was in the same kind of class, or not class, but position as Ryan Pineda, to where, he and his wife were broke and they had to do something. So they moved to Missouri and started flipping houses, and now he's doing well over 100 a year that are wholesale flips or buying rentals. So, really interesting off of that. And I really related to his episode too, to where it's like, hey, what do you have to lose? So the Better Life podcast, they've centered now a lot towards real estate specifically. So but they're still bringing on people with really interesting stories. And they tie the Christian mindset into it quite a bit as well, which is interesting for me to hear. I've actually picked up a couple books, because one of his last 3 questions is, what 3 books would you recommend or that have changed your life? So I'm always writing down new books, and I've checked out quite a few that the guests have read off, as well as Brandon's books, which I've read just about all of them, because he's got a couple with Bigger Pockets. But just creating a better life for yourself, like the title of the podcast is, and that's really what we're all trying to do. So creating a better life for yourself with your health, your wealth. He takes more towards the real estate side, and then relationships. They always talk about their spouses on there. So, that's an interesting one to hear from, and their parenting, just growing and creating a better life for yourself. I've gotten so much from that podcast, and I love listening to it every single week. So that one I'm going to end on. I love tuning into all these podcasts, and the Better Life podcast, I go back and listen to quite a few episodes over and over, just because I love the story. And, if I'm stressing out about something, I'm able to go back and, get a little bit of motivation. And that's what Cam Cathcart's episode early on in the podcast was for me, because especially going into this flip, it's where are you at now? And, what do you have to lose? Because going into flipping, I was really nervous about it, and, I had the same nerves as they did, but they had kids and, had to completely move and change their entire life, to where, I'm at this position, and it's like, I'm at rock bottom, but I really don't have much farther to fall. And, that I don't mean that in a bad way at all. It's just like, all right, well, I can tell you that a normal W-2 job and having that boss probably isn't what I'm going to be doing. So where do I go from here and really create this life that I want to live? So that podcast gives me a lot of insight towards doing that, and it kind of builds into the Wealthy Way, to where he's bringing in some of these bigger guests and the how-to. And then the Action Academy podcast is these people that were in my position or in these high-paying corporate jobs that were able to leave their jobs because they bought their businesses. So they all compound on one another, and they talk about different aspects of business and real estate and life, and it all just kind of comes together. So really cool 3 podcasts that I've been listening to lately. And if you want to go check those out, they're all on Spotify, Apple, and wherever you can find your podcast. So I appreciate you tuning in to the Figuring It Out Finance podcast today. My name is Chris Riggenbaugh, and I'll be back again on Friday after the 4th of July with a new episode. Not sure what topic yet, so make sure to tune in then. And I appreciate you listening. We'll see you next time.